Ethan wiped the sweat from his forehead as he climbed over the uneven rocks near the mining outpost. The sun on this frontier planet was harsh, its light reflecting off the red dust that covered everything. He had been sent here to repair a malfunctioning energy relay, a task that seemed simple at first but had quickly grown complicated. The equipment was older than he expected, and the wiring was twisted in ways that made him wonder if anyone had maintained it properly in decades. He focused, letting the sounds of the wind and the distant calls of alien birds fade into the background. That was when he noticed a faint glow coming from a narrow crevice in the rock face. Curious, he approached, thinking it might be some kind of natural energy phenomenon. The closer he got, the more he realized it was not natural. There were structures, delicate and shimmering, blending perfectly with the rock. It looked like a small, hidden settlement. Ethan crouched behind a rock and examined the strange building. The walls were made of a translucent material, almost like glass but with a subtle, pulsating glow. This was not part of the mining outpost. Whoever lived here clearly valued privacy. But before he could take another step back, the door slid open. A figure stepped out, a woman but unlike any human he had ever seen. She was tall, elegant, and moved with a grace that seemed almost unreal. Her skin shimmered faintly, catching the light of the sun in soft, rainbow-like patterns. She froze for a moment when she noticed him, then quickly moved back inside. Ethan realized he had accidentally seen her in a private moment. He had not meant to, but the situation was unmistakable. He immediately turned his gaze away, hoping she would not notice him. It was too late. The woman Lyra stepped back outside, her expression a mix of shock and anger. She held a sleek silver blaster in her hand, pointing it directly at him. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice firm but not unkind. "Why are you here?" Ethan raised his hand slowly, careful not to make any sudden movements. I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't mean to. I was repairing equipment nearby. I didn't know anyone lived here. Lyra's eyes narrowed. "You have seen something you were not meant to see," she said. "In my world, that is a serious offense." Ethan swallowed, feeling the tension rise in his chest. "I understand. It was an accident. I won't tell anyone, I promise. Please, I can leave right now." Her blaster did not waver. "In my culture, accidents like this require a resolution. Not punishment, but honor must be preserved. You must come with me. Now." Before Ethan could protest, two more figures appeared behind Lyra. They were her guards, their bodies tall and armored in a way that made it clear they were trained warriors. Ethan realized that arguing would be pointless. Slowly, he lowered his hands and nodded. "I'll come with you." The walk to her palace was quiet. Ethan kept his eyes forward, careful not to accidentally glance at Lyra again. He studied the landscape instead, towering rock formations, alien plants that glowed softly in the dim light, and the occasional strange creature that flitted in the distance. Despite the tension, he could not help but marvel at the beauty of this world. Lyra spoke after a long silence. "You are lucky I did not summon the tribunal," she said. "They would have insisted on a more severe resolution." Ethan shook his head. I'm glad it didn't come to that." He hesitated. "But what does this resolution involve?" Lyra looked at him for a long moment. "It is not simple to explain," she said. "In our culture, seeing a noble in such a state without permission requires what you might call a binding arrangement. It ensures that honor is maintained and that no one can claim insult or injury." Ethan's mind raced. He had heard stories of alien customs, but nothing prepared him for this. "Binding arrangement?" he asked cautiously. "Yes," Lyra replied. "It is similar to marriage in your human terms, but it is more about respect, tradition, and honor than personal feeling. You will accompany me to the ceremony. There your role will be defined." Ethan tried to process what she said. A marriage, on another planet, with someone he had just met and under these circumstances. I don't know if I understand," he said honestly. "You will understand soon enough," she said, her expression softening slightly. "Do not try to escape. That will only make matters worse." The palace appeared over the next rise, a grand structure carved into the side of a mountain. Its walls shimmered like the building he had seen earlier, but on a much larger scale. Bridges of translucent material spanned across natural chasms, and glowing fountains of liquid energy flowed along the sides. Ethan felt a mixture of awe and nervousness. Inside, the palace was even more magnificent. The main hall was vast, with ceilings that seemed to stretch forever, and walls adorned with intricate patterns that shifted and changed colors. Alien courtiers moved gracefully, their eyes glancing at him with curiosity. Ethan felt like a visitor from another world, which, of course, he was. Lyra led him to a room at the center of the palace. "Rest here for a moment," she said. "Soon, you will meet the council who will guide the resolution." Ethan nodded, sinking into a chair that seemed perfectly molded to his body. He let out a long breath, trying to calm the storm of thoughts in his head. He had expected this assignment to be challenging, but not like this. As he sat, he noticed small details about the room, tiny devices that emitted soft light, panels that seemed to float without support, and a delicate fragrance that filled the air. It was both alien and strangely comforting. A few moments later, a door opened and two alien officials entered. They were tall and regal, wearing garments that shimmered like Lyra's skin. "Ethan of Earth," one said, "you have been brought here under unusual circumstances. You must participate in our ceremony to honor the noble Lyra's privacy and maintain the balance of our customs." Ethan nodded, unsure what else to say. "I understand. I will do my best." The official inclined their head. "Good. The ceremony is not meant to harm you. It is a test of character and respect. Your actions will determine how you are received in our world." Lyra stood silently beside them, her blaster now holstered. There was a quiet strength in her posture, a sense of authority that Ethan could not ignore. He realized that despite the awkwardness of the situation, he had a chance to show what it meant to be human, not through words, but through action. For the first time since arriving on this planet, Ethan felt a spark of determination. He would face whatever challenge lay ahead, not just to save himself, but to earn the respect of Lyra and her people. The officials led him down a long corridor, passing chambers filled with alien artifacts and glowing devices. Ethan's heart raced with a mix of fear and excitement. Each step brought him closer to a ceremony he did not fully understand, yet he knew that his courage and honesty would be his guide. Finally, they reached a large chamber at the heart of the palace. The ceiling was impossibly high, with light cascading from floating orbs above. At the center of the room was a platform, surrounded by alien symbols etched into the floor. This, Ethan realized, was where the ceremony would take place. Lyra turned to him, her expression unreadable. "Remember," she said softly, "this is about honor. Do not act recklessly. Show who you are, and you may yet find respect in this place." Ethan nodded. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. This was unlike any situation he had faced on Earth, yet he understood one thing clearly. He would face it with courage, integrity, and humanity. As the officials began preparations, Ethan felt a sense of resolve settle over him. He did not know what the ceremony would demand, nor what challenges lay ahead, but he knew one truth: he would meet them head-on, and perhaps, in doing so, earn a place in a world far stranger than his own. And in that moment, as Lyra stood silently beside him, Ethan realized that what had begun as an accidental glance into someone's privacy was turning into something far more profound. A test not just of survival, but of character, courage, and the human spirit. The doors to the chamber opened, and the first group of alien witnesses stepped inside. Ethan straightened his back, his mind clear and focused. Whatever came next, he would face it as a human, proud, resilient, and unyielding. And thus, The first chapter of an unexpected and extraordinary story had begun, on a planet where honor, courage, and humanity were the keys to survival, and perhaps to an unexpected friendship with someone who had once pointed a blaster at him. Ethan stepped onto the platform, feeling the smooth, slightly warm surface beneath his boots. The chamber was silent except for the soft hum of the floating orbs above and the occasional shuffle of alien feet. He looked around at the witnesses who had entered, tall, elegant beings, their skin shimmering in soft colors, their eyes observing him with careful scrutiny. He could feel their judgment, but he did not flinch. Lyra stood beside him, her posture straight, her hands folded in front of her. There was a calm authority about her, but also a trace of curiosity. She had not yet spoken since they entered, yet Ethan could sense her eyes following his every move. One of the officials, a tall figure with iridescent skin, stepped forward. "Ethan of Earth," they said, their voice melodic and precise, "you are here to participate in the ceremonial tests that determine your worthiness. These challenges are not meant to harm you, but to evaluate your character, intelligence, and respect for our ways. Fail and your reception in our world will be limited. Succeed and you will earn honor not just for yourself, but for the noble Lyra." Ethan nodded, trying to mask the nervousness that fluttered in his stomach. He had faced complex machinery, dangerous wildlife, and extreme conditions on frontier planets before, but nothing had prepared him for this. This was not just a physical challenge. It was a test of his mind, his instincts, and his ability to navigate a world utterly different from his own. The first challenge was presented. He was guided to a series of platforms suspended above a glowing pit. The platforms were uneven, some narrow, some wide, and they shifted slightly as he stepped on them. His task was simple in concept: cross the pit without falling, reaching the other side where the next test awaited. Ethan glanced at Lyra, who gave him a small, unreadable nod. He took a deep breath and began. Each step required careful balance, his mind calculating the exact placement of his feet, while his instincts guided his movements. Several times a platform tipped under him, sending his heart racing, but he steadied himself, using quick reflexes and careful judgment. Halfway across, a platform tilted sharply. Ethan grabbed a side rail and swung himself to the next one, his muscles burning with effort. He reached the far side, panting, and the witnesses nodded in approval. It was not a flawless performance, but it had demonstrated adaptability, focus, and calm under pressure, qualities valued highly in this world. The next challenge tested his intelligence. He was led into a room filled with a lattice of glowing panels. Each panel displayed symbols that shifted constantly, forming patterns that seemed random at first glance. The task was to activate the panels in the correct sequence to open the door on the other side. Ethan approached cautiously, studying the patterns. He had learned early in his engineering career to look for underlying logic in complex systems, and he applied the same principle here. He noted repetitions, aligned symbols, and traced connections that were not immediately obvious. Minutes passed, and tension grew. The alien officials watched silently, their expressions inscrutable. Ethan's hands moved quickly over the panels, pressing them in sequences that he calculated carefully. A soft chime sounded, and the final door clicked open. The officials inclined their heads slightly, signaling approval. Lyra's eyes softened, and she allowed herself a small, almost imperceptible smile. The third challenge was unlike anything he had faced before. He was led to an arena where alien creatures, large but non-aggressive, were contained. His task was to guide them through a narrow path to the other side, using only gestures and commands. The creatures were intelligent, responding to tone and movement rather than speech. At first, the creatures ignored him, sniffing the air and shifting their weight. Ethan remembered his work with artificial intelligence and machine behavior back on Earth. He mimicked their movements, made slow, deliberate gestures, and used soft sounds to gain their attention. Gradually, the creatures followed him, moving in an orderly line through the twisting path. When he reached the other side, the audience, both officials and Lyra, clapped softly. Ethan felt a surge of relief. These tasks were not just tests of skill, they were lessons in observation, empathy, and understanding. He began to realize that the alien society valued not brute strength, but patience, intelligence, and respect for life. After a brief rest, the final challenge began. This one was a test of courage and decision-making under pressure. He was taken to a chamber with a holographic simulation of the palace grounds. Suddenly, alarms sounded, and holographic images of intruders appeared. Ethan had to act quickly, determining the best way to protect Lyra and the witnesses without causing unnecessary harm. He assessed the situation, identifying weak points in the intruders, positions, and possible escape routes. He issued quick, precise commands to the holographic security systems, directing them to intercept the intruders while ensuring no one was harmed. The intruders were neutralized virtually, and the officials nodded in approval. Lyra watched him silently during the exercise. For the first time she spoke, "You think quickly. You do not rely only on strength but on reason and observation. That is unusual for a human." Ethan gave a small smile. "I've had to survive in places where strength alone doesn't save you," he replied. "Observation and quick thinking often matter more." Lyra inclined her head, acknowledging the point. "Perhaps you are more capable than I expected." The officials gathered around and one stepped forward. "Ethan of Earth, you have completed the challenges. Your performance demonstrates intelligence, courage, and respect for life. You are deemed worthy to continue in our ceremonial process." Ethan exhaled, feeling the tension in his shoulders release. It had been a grueling series of tests, but he had succeeded. More importantly, he had earned a measure of respect from the alien court, something that seemed almost impossible when he had first arrived. Lyra walked beside him as they returned to the main chamber. "Do not let this go to your head," she said softly. "The ceremony is only beginning. These tests showed your skill, but they do not define your character fully. You must still act with honor." Ethan nodded, understanding the unspoken lesson. This world had rules far different from Earth, and to survive here, he would have to continue adapting, observing, and respecting their ways. The preparations for the ceremonial part of the resolution began. Ethan was guided to a dressing room where he was provided with clothing suitable for the occasion. It was elegant, lightweight, and designed to fit his human body while blending with alien styles. He marveled at the design, noting the subtle patterns that glowed softly in response to movement. As he dressed, he felt a mixture of anxiety and anticipation. He had passed the challenges, but the ceremony itself was still unfamiliar. It was a social and cultural test, and one misstep could undo all the progress he had made. Lyra entered quietly. She wore a ceremonial garment that shimmered with colors he could barely describe. "You are ready," she said simply. "Remember, the ceremony is about honor, not dominance. Respect is what matters most here." Ethan nodded. "I understand. I will do my best." The officials led them to the central hall where the ceremony would take place. The witnesses were assembled, their eyes watching closely. Ethan took a deep breath, reminding himself of what had carried him through the challenges so far: calm, observation, and integrity. The ceremony began with formal greetings and the exchange of symbolic items. Ethan handled each item with care, paying attention to the subtle cues from Lyra and the officials. Every action was noted, every gesture weighed, and he felt the pressure of hundreds of eyes on him. A moment came when he was required to demonstrate his respect for Lyra's culture by performing a traditional gesture of honor. His hands shook slightly as he mimicked the movements he had observed, hoping it was correct. Lyra watched intently, then nodded once, a small, approving gesture that made Ethan's chest lift with relief. The ceremony continued, moving from formal gestures to shared tasks that required cooperation and trust. Ethan and Lyra worked together, navigating complex arrangements of symbols, completing small challenges that symbolized mutual understanding. With each success, a subtle change occurred between them, mutual respect growing, a shared sense of accomplishment forming. By the end of the day, Ethan had completed the ceremonial process. The officials and witnesses acknowledged his efforts, and Lyra spoke for the first time in a personal tone. "You have acted with honesty, courage, and respect. These are qualities I admire. You may not understand our ways fully yet, but you have earned a place among us." Ethan bowed slightly, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders. He had come to this world by accident, faced a series of unimaginable challenges, and emerged with respect and recognition. More than that, he had begun to form a connection with Lyra, built on trust, cooperation, and a shared understanding. As they left the chamber, Lyra said quietly, "Tomorrow, you will officially assume your role in our society. That will mark the next step in this unusual arrangement." Ethan glanced at her, curiosity in his eyes. "Next step," she smiled faintly, a mix of seriousness and amusement. "Yes, the process is not complete until formal recognition, but for now, rest. You have earned it." Ethan nodded, feeling exhausted but strangely exhilarated. This planet, its people, and Lyra herself had challenged him in ways he could never have imagined. And yet he had risen to the occasion, proving that humanity's strength was not just in technology or physical skill, but in courage, adaptability, and integrity. As he lay down that night in the palace quarters, the alien city glowing softly outside his window, Ethan reflected on the day. He had come as an outsider, accidentally stumbling into a dangerous situation. But now he had taken the first step toward becoming part of something larger, something that required not just survival, but understanding, respect, and honor. And deep down, he knew that the journey was only beginning. Tomorrow would bring the next chapter of this unexpected adventure, a chapter where his actions, his choices, and his humanity would be tested in ways he had yet to imagine. But for tonight, he allowed himself a moment of calm. He had faced the unknown, passed the tests, and earned a measure of trust and respect in a world far beyond Earth. That, he realized, was a victory in itself, and a promise that he could meet whatever came next with courage and honor. Ethan awoke to a soft light spilling through the translucent walls of his quarters. The palace was quiet, but there was a sense of anticipation in the air. Today was the day of the formal ceremony that would complete the unusual arrangement he had entered into with Lyra. He felt a mixture of nervousness and resolve. After all the challenges, this was the moment where he would demonstrate not only his respect for Lyra and her people, but also his ability to navigate the social and cultural complexities of this alien world. Lyra arrived shortly after he had finished preparing. Her ceremonial attire shimmered in shades of violet and silver, flowing elegantly as she moved. Her expression was unreadable, a mask of dignity that concealed any personal feeling. Ethan took a deep breath, reminding himself of everything he had learned over the past day. Patience, observation, and integrity were just as important as courage. They walked together to the central hall, where the chamber was already filled with witnesses. Alien courtiers and officials lined the walls, their eyes observing every movement, every gesture. Ethan could feel their scrutiny, but he kept his posture straight and his expression calm. He understood that the ceremony was as much about proving his character as it was about completing the formalities. The officials began the proceedings by presenting symbolic items, each representing a different aspect of Lyra's culture: honor, respect, loyalty, and trust. Ethan handled each item with care, mindful of the instructions he had observed. A small misstep could have been interpreted as disrespect, but he focused on each action, ensuring it was deliberate and accurate. Lyra observed silently, her hands folded in front of her. At times, Ethan thought he saw a flicker of amusement or approval in her eyes, but it vanished quickly. She was clearly a person who valued composure and control, and Ethan understood that any attempt to read her emotions too openly could be risky. The first part of the ceremony required Ethan to demonstrate a symbolic commitment to protecting and respecting Lyra's honor. He was guided through a series of tasks that involved navigating intricate patterns of symbols and devices, each representing a different principle. With every correct step, he felt a small sense of accomplishment, but he remained focused, knowing that any mistake could have consequences. As he completed the final task, the chamber filled with a soft hum of approval. The officials nodded, acknowledging his efforts, and Lyra's gaze softened slightly. For the first time, she spoke in a tone that carried personal weight. "You have shown patience and respect. That is not easily done for a human or for anyone unfamiliar with our ways." Ethan inclined his head. "I've learned that understanding comes from observing carefully and listening, even when it's difficult. I respect your culture, and I want to do what is right." The officials then guided them to a raised platform at the center of the hall. This was the symbolic point of union, the place where their arrangement would be formalized. Ethan's heart pounded. He had passed the tests and challenges, but this moment felt different. It was public, official, and irreversible in the eyes of Lyra's society. Lyra stepped forward, holding a ceremonial item that represented her trust and willingness to recognize him as a partner. She extended it toward Ethan. "This gesture signifies a bond, one of mutual respect and honor. Accept it, and you accept the responsibilities it entails." Ethan took the item carefully, feeling its weight. It was a simple object, yet it carried profound meaning. He understood that this was more than a ceremony. It was a declaration of trust, a mutual acknowledgement of their roles in each other's lives, however unconventional it might be. As he accepted the gesture, a soft ripple of approval passed through the witnesses. The officials nodded, and a low hum of ceremonial energy filled the chamber. Ethan felt a strange mix of relief and pride. He had navigated a world utterly foreign to him, met its challenges with honesty and courage, and earned a place of respect among its people. But the ceremony was not yet complete. A final task awaited, one that tested both courage and quick thinking. A sudden alert rang through the chamber, signaling a potential breach at the palace gates. Ethan felt a surge of adrenaline. This was real, not a test or simulation. He had to act to ensure the safety of everyone present, including Lyra. He scanned the room quickly, assessing the situation. Using a combination of observation and instinct, he directed the alien security systems to contain the threat. He coordinated with Lyra's guards, issuing concise instructions that balanced caution with efficiency. Within moments, the situation was under control, the intruders neutralized without harm to anyone in the chamber. Lyra's expression softened, a flicker of genuine admiration appearing. "You act decisively, with care," she said. "That is the mark of someone capable of more than mere survival." Ethan nodded, though his pulse was still racing. "I've learned that in any world, quick thinking and respect for others can make the difference between success and failure." With the crisis resolved, the officials returned to the ceremony. They declared Ethan worthy of formal recognition, and the final part of the ritual began. It involved a symbolic exchange, where both Ethan and Lyra demonstrated their commitment to honor, trust, and mutual respect. Ethan followed the precise movements he had been shown, his gestures deliberate, his mind focused. Lyra mirrored him, her eyes occasionally meeting his with a hint of acknowledgement. As the ritual concluded, the officials pronounced them formally bound in the ceremonial arrangement. Ethan felt a strange mixture of relief, pride, and curiosity. Though unconventional, the process had not been coercive or unfair. It had been a series of challenges and symbolic acts designed to test character and mutual respect. Lyra turned to him, her usual composure slightly softened. "You have surprised me, Ethan of Earth. I expected a human to falter under pressure, to act recklessly or selfishly. Yet you have shown patience, intelligence, and respect. That is rare, even among my people." Ethan smiled faintly. "I only tried to do what was right. I didn't want to dishonor you or your culture." She studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Perhaps this unusual arrangement will be more tolerable than I feared." There was a hint of amusement in her tone, a rare glimpse of her personality breaking through her formal exterior. The ceremony ended with a light, celebratory tone. Witnesses dispersed, congratulating Ethan and Lyra on completing the ritual. Though he was still adjusting to the alien customs, Ethan felt a sense of belonging. He had started the day as an outsider, uncertain and cautious, and now he had earned respect, trust, and recognition. In the quiet moments afterward, Lyra led him to a balcony overlooking the city. The view was breathtaking, spires of alien architecture, glowing softly in the dim light, blending seamlessly with the natural landscape. Ethan marveled at the scene, feeling a sense of wonder and connection to this world. "You've adapted quickly," Lyra said, her tone more relaxed than he had ever heard. "Most humans would have failed long before now." Ethan shrugged, smiling. "I guess I just focus on what I can do, one step at a time. I've learned a lot from your people today." Lyra's eyes softened. "And I have learned something from you as well. Courage and integrity are qualities that transcend worlds." They stood together in silence for a moment, watching the alien city. Ethan realized that despite the unusual circumstances, the accidental intrusion, the ceremonial tests, the formal binding, they had developed a shared understanding. There was mutual respect, a foundation that could grow into something deeper over time. Later, as Ethan prepared for the first night of the ceremonial union, he felt a strange sense of calm. The palace was quiet, the challenges of the day behind him, and yet he knew this was only the beginning. The relationship with Lyra, though unusual and formalized through tradition, offered an opportunity to learn, grow, and perhaps even form a bond that transcended cultural boundaries. Lyra entered, not in her formal attire, but in a simpler robe suitable for the private setting. She offered a nod of acknowledgement rather than words, a gesture that spoke volumes. Ethan responded with a small bow, showing respect and understanding. They spent the evening discussing the events of the past days, sharing perspectives and learning about each other's worlds. Ethan described his life on Earth, his work as an engineer, and the challenges he had faced on frontier planets. Lyra spoke of her culture, her responsibilities, and the values that guided her people. Through the conversation, Ethan began to see the depth of Lyra's intelligence, her strategic thinking, and her commitment to her society. And Lyra began to recognize the human qualities that had allowed Ethan to succeed: honesty, resilience, quick thinking, and adaptability. By the time the evening drew to a close, Ethan felt a sense of accomplishment and hope. He had entered this world by accident, faced challenges that tested every aspect of his being, and emerged with respect, recognition, and an unusual but promising bond with Lyra. As he lay down to rest, he reflected on the journey so far. He had seen that courage, intelligence, and integrity were universal qualities, valued not only on Earth but across galaxies. And he understood that the true measure of humanity was not strength or technology, but the ability to adapt, respect others, and act honorably in any situation. Tomorrow would bring new experiences, new challenges, and opportunities to learn more about Lyra's world. But tonight, Ethan allowed himself a moment of peace, knowing that he had proven himself, not only to Lyra and her people, but also to himself. And in that quiet moment, he realized that this unusual arrangement, A shotgun wedding of sorts, begun by accident, was not merely a formality. It was a chance for connection, understanding, and shared adventure. He had entered as an outsider, but he would continue as someone who had earned a place, not through coercion or force, but through courage, respect, and the timeless qualities that defined humanity itself. The stars outside the palace shimmered softly, a reminder that even in a vast and alien universe, human qualities could shine brightly. Ethan closed his eyes, ready for whatever the future held, confident that he could face it with integrity, courage, and the honor that had carried him this far. And so, the story of Ethan and Lyra's unexpected journey continued, a tale of human resilience, courage, and understanding bridging the gap between worlds, beginning with an accident but leading to something far greater than either could have anticipated.